Have you been hearing about comprehensible input for language learning? Maybe you're watching discussions online in Facebook groups or hearing about it on Instagram and you kind of want to try it, but you feel a little bit overwhelmed. If you don't know where to start, but you want to give it a shot, let's do it together. What I wanted to do in this video is to give you a few ideas and activities you could use to kind of dip your toes into CI without feeling like you have to get rid of everything that you've been doing for years. Sound good? Let's get started. Hey, it's Ashley, aka Señorita Spanish, where I provide easy-to-use resources to save you time and energy while you're lesson planning. If you're new here, I just want to make sure that you know that links to everything that I mentioned will be down in the description box below this video. So first, let's do a quick recap. Remember, CI is not a method, right? We have methods and strategies we can use to deliver comprehensible input to our students, but CI isn't really a method. And I know it's tricky because sometimes people say like, I'm switching to CI or I'm, doing CI, and it's kind of weird because it's not a verb, it's a thing, but whatever. If you're confused by this, maybe check out my video, What is Comprehensible Input for Language Acquisition? I will make sure to link that for you here. If you're feeling overwhelmed and not sure where to start, let's dig in. What I want to do in this video is to give you 3 steps to dip your toes into delivering comprehensible input to your students without, the overwhelm. So first, I want you to consider yourself, like you. What are things that you enjoy in your classes? I know that sometimes I've talked to people who are trying to figure out how to get started with CI and they're like, oh, it seems like the teacher is, all over the place and they're super high energy and they're, talking to the kids about this and that and that. And it just seems exhausting. That doesn't have to be, right, your strategy. That just doesn't have to be how you teach. If that's not who you are as a person, that's going to be exhausting and it's not going to feel right. It's not going to be a good fit for you. So first, I recommend that you do maybe some self-reflection and think about what are things that you enjoy in your class, that you enjoy doing with your students, and kind of consider what are they like, how would you describe those kinds of activities? Are you center of the stage? Are you low energy? Are you high energy? Kind of a mix. Make sure you take those things into account. I talk about this more in my video, Lesson Planning Tips for World Language Teachers, if you want to really dig into this reflection piece, but maybe you already have a pretty good idea. Once you know what you like, finding the right activity will be easier and it won't feel so scary because you won't be looking at what somebody else is doing in their classroom and saying, I could never do that. You can do that, but you don't have to, right? You don't have to do what somebody else is doing in their classroom. And I think that's one of those comparison traps that we sometimes fall into. So make sure you're thinking about yourself, your skills, and your strengths as a teacher and who you are as a person before we take step 2, which is choose your activity. Here are my personal favorite gateway activities to delivering comprehensible input. First, movie talk. I talk about movie talk all the time on my channel. I have a whole playlist of movie talk lessons that you could just go download and try, watch the video, think about how I like to set up the lesson, and then use the free resources that I've shared to help you get your very first one over with. Because it might feel a little bit like, oh, done with that the first time you do it, but you're gonna love it. The next thing that I highly recommend to get started is weekend chat. Whether you do this on Fridays or on Mondays or Fridays and Mondays, I think that this one is super chill because it's just talking to your students and you're probably already talking to your students. It's just maybe considering a few options to support them in that input first before you're focusing on getting the output from them as they're talking about what they're going to do. I have a video where I share details, ideas, and different ways you can incorporate this strategy into your classes if you'd like to learn more. But I think this is a great one to get started with because it could be just 5 minutes at the end of class or just 5 minutes at the beginning of class on Monday. And it can start with you sharing about yourself or even just giving your students yes or no options. Very laid back. The next option I have for you are gallery walks. And this is probably the best option if you are kind of introverted, if you don't like being in front of your students in a very high energy way all the time. Gallery walks are a great way to give your students a ton of comprehensible input without just pouring tons of energy out of yourself. They are one of my go-to activities that I like to do every single unit because it is a break for me, right? It's not super high energy for me. The kids love it. They get to move and they get tons of input. Win, 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 win. I do have a video where I talk about gallery walks and how to use them and how to get started, as well as share some free resources for doing gallery walks with your students over there. So I'll make sure to link that video for you in the description box below. Okay, my next one for you is reading, because again, you are probably already doing reading activities with your classes. We're just maybe focusing on ways we can stretch that reading and get more and more input out of it. The next thing that I would recommend for you is doing a story and reading activities with it. And that's pretty broad. I have a ton of different reading activities for you, so what I'm going to do is share with you some of my favorites that you can combine with any story. Okay, so the 5 reading activities that I'm going to recommend to you, and again, just pick and choose: Tabata Timeline, True or False, Mi Lapis, Pareja Mentirosa, and Speed Date Translate. All of these are pretty easy to run. They're really engaging for students. And again, they're things where the students are interacting with each other, but it's not necessarily you like directing the stage. You know, it doesn't have to be you full energy all the time, which is one of the things that I think people most often feel uncomfortable when they're considering starting to deliver more CI to their students. I do have an entire playlist of reading activities that you can choose from and where you can learn about those 5 specifically that I mentioned, but I do just want to caution you as you're digging into that playlist to just beware of the overwhelm. It's a pretty big playlist. There's kind of a lot of options. Use it as a bank of ideas, but don't feel like, oh my gosh, I need to do this and I need to do this and I need to do this. Go to it when you feel stumped, try something out, and then decide, is that going to go into my frequent rotation, or is it something that, wasn't really a good fit for me and my students, and I probably won't try that again until I have a new group of students who maybe need something else, right? Remember, you don't have to do everything. And third, last but not least, third step to dipping your toes into delivering CI with your students is to start adding activities to your tool belt, which we kind of did in step 2, but now we're going to rinse and repeat. So when you feel comfortable, add in another activity, right? So maybe you've been doing weekend chat for a little while and you kind of feel like you have it down, and maybe you're ready to try your first movie talk, or you tried your first movie talk and it was pretty high energy, so maybe you want to try something a little bit more chill, like a gallery walk. So basically step 3 is for you to continue trying new activities, evaluating whether or not they're a good fit, adding them into your rotation, or saying, not for me. Do not feel like you have to start from scratch 100% entirely tossing out everything. Part of this process is going to be evaluating the activities that you've been doing for years, maybe at this point, and saying, is this a good use of our class time? Does this really help my students get more comprehensible input, get good comprehensible input, right? Evaluating that source of input and their engagement. And as you're working through this process, you're going to start to say, oh, you know what? Maybe I won't do that activity anymore, but I really liked this one that I tried, and you're going to start putting that into your rotation. Okay, so let's recap. First, you're going to consider yourself and your own teaching style and find activities that are a good fit for what you enjoy in your classroom. Second, you're just going to try something. You have to jump in at some point in time. I listed some of my favorites. Pick something, give it a shot. And then third, you're going to do this process of kind of evaluating and either rotating in or rotating out. Things that are going to be activities that you consistently do with your students versus things that are maybe on their way out the door or, just weren't a good fit for you and your teaching style. See step 1. So again, please do not feel like you have to do all of this all at once. I do have a few more posts to support you, but I think the post that you choose next is going to depend on where you are in your own journey to delivering CI with your students and the district that you're in, the department that you're in, what your school requires of you. So here are 3 options for you to check out next. The first one is how to deliver comprehensible input when you are tied to a textbook that wasn't written with that as a focus. The second is unit planning tips. How do you design a unit centered around a comprehensible story for your Spanish classes? And the third post I'd recommend to you is lesson planning tips. This is a lot more zoomed in than the unit plan. Unit plan is kind of an overview. The lesson plan tips are what are you going to actually do on the day-to-day of that unit plan. So I will make sure to link each of those in the description box below for you. But those are the 3 videos that I think are the best fit depending on where you are in your school and what you need, okay? Thanks so much for watching. As always, if you need anything, I'm here to help you. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.